Okay, so it seems we are live now. Okay, great. Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. Hola, namaste, vanakkam, bonjour. To whichever part of the world you're joining from. My name is Modat. I'm your host for today's Hiring Diaring session. I'm one of the founding members of Skillspace.ai. We are a Belgium-based company, and what we've built is a technical assessment platform that helps companies to deliver end-to-end technical assessments in a very seamless and a condensed manner. We are a very young company. However, we have been able to earn trust of companies including Cisco, Alibaba, Capgemini, and a few more. Hiring Diaries is our initiative where we try to support the talent and engineering fraternity that has been supporting us till date. This is where we collaborate with the top 1% of talent leaders, as we call them, who are like-minded and are willing to come on board with us to empower the audience out there. So, for this episode of Hiring Diaries, I'm very delighted to introduce our guest, Vishwanath. Uh, Vishwanath is a seasoned HR leader. He has been mentoring several early stage startups and is very kind in doing that. I must say that. His expertise lies in global talent acquisition over 18 plus years, where he has been working with product development and investment banking captives. On top of it, he has driven global talent branding, talent strategy, candidate experience, and university relations for brands like Wells Fargo, Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, and a few more. Currently, Vishwanath heads the talent for Dun Bradstreet India, which is an American conglomerate, which is an American multinational, and he manages talent strategy, branding, and university relations at the organization. On top of it, he's also an avid speaker and has been speaking on various notable forums such as IAMS, SHRM, People Matters, and many more. So I'm more than delighted to have him with us today. So welcome to the show, Vishwanath.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that.
So okay, thank you, Vishwanath. Now proceeding further, I'll probably introduce the agenda for the day. So it's all around candidate screening strategies in technology, and why exactly have you picked this? So at this point in time, now more than ever, the need for identifying, engaging, and onboarding talent is crucial. Technology companies are experiencing a surge in, as we call it, the growth and venture capital funding. This and at the same time, we see a lot of international companies coming into India and trying to tap into the Indian talent, which is out there.
Absolutely.
At the same time, there's an acute shortage of talent, which is where a fierce talent competition or talent war is coming from. People have also been calling this as the Great Resignation. There have been these phases where some of the other trouble has come up. People have given good names to it. This time it's the Great Resignation. And in this episode, we'll be discussing various aspects of candidate screening strategies. And if you have any questions that you want to ask to Vishwanath in today's session, please feel free to put them in comments. Our team is working on the back end. They'll be happy to pick your questions. Okay. So without any further ado, I'll pick the first question of the day. So it's around okay. So first of all, it's a very obvious question that I want to ask here is around the importance of discussing this particular agenda. Why do we even have to discuss candidate screening strategies in the first place? And one thing that I want to understand is, according to you as a talent leader, what do you think? How early in a company stage shall someone discuss this? Is it someone as soon as they're starting the company, or after a certain point in time? What do you think?
Okay, so firstly, let me thank you and Mudit, and then thanks Skillspace for giving me this opportunity. I truly believe that you guys are doing something really good, and that's the reason why I'm talking to you guys. So that is the icing on the cake. So coming to your question, right? So with the growing complexity of positions across different companies, and they are associated with different technologies, it is important to have corporates to have a robust assessment mechanism. Each requirement, for example, let me take an example, right? So if we are hiring 10 people, ten different requirements are there, where we're talking about technology skills, then we're talking about different domains and all of that stuff. So and gone out those days where companies rely on a typical 30-40 minutes kind of an assessment and all of that, because that is not really objective in the way that it is coming out, right? So that is where people like you will come into picture. A robust assessment is required because we are trying to hire for a company, and then that company is having XYZ kind of requirements to be filled by this person by doing coding and all of that. So that is where the role of this thing is very important. According to me, a lot of companies are thinking about. Some of them are doing in-house, some of them are doing working with people like you and all of that. But there is a lot happening at this point in time as we speak, right? Some companies have figured out a good, smart way. Some companies are still in the journey of that, right? So that's the way of right. So go back to the Martech law, right? So when technology is advancing in a pace, the adoption of the technology is not at the pace at which the technology is advancing. So I would say there is a lot of space for people like you to kind of help companies like us to ensure that this smart assessment is done, so that we are able to understand and we are able to take decisions from there. That's my view, Mudit.
Thank you, Vishwanath, for putting that across. And thank you for your kind appreciation about our work. It's very humbling to hear it from you. One thing that I want to pick your thoughts on is like typically we talk to companies of all stages. We also have a partner program through which we have partnered with a lot of VC firms, and we work with early stage companies out there. And in a lot of cases, we are working with Fortune 500. It's like a must have requirement in a lot of cases as we see. However, from a talent leader's perspective, what do you think? At what stage is it ideal to start discussing this? Uh, yeah.
So I would say that it all depends upon how the company looks at the technology stack.
Hmm.
Let me take an example. Right? There will be a very future company. Let's take an example of Meta or Facebook.
Hmm.
Their assessment methodology versus requirement is completely different to a company which is on the other side of the story, right?
Hmm.
So it is very important to ensure that the business teams are quickly aligned to the talent teams like us. We both go to the market, understand different offerings that market can provide to us. It could be a skill space, it could be a hacker rank, hacker. I'm just taking an example, right? Then understand which of these platforms are very suitable for the kind of work that we are doing. Work with partners like you, incubate the entire journey in such a way that it becomes a seamless journey, and make sure that implementation becomes successful. And as a company, we are hiring the people that we are looking for, right? So just to cut short, I think business teams have to completely align to talent teams, which is people like us. We both have to first discuss, understand the kind of position that we are trying to hire, look at the market, what it kind of offers, and see which of those partners can be the best suit, and work with them, and if required, customize the way you would want that partner to work with, right? So a particular solution which is given by you to a company may not be suitable for a company which is B. I think that's
Right.
where my view is. The more the connectivity between these two teams, which is engineering team and hiring team, I think that is where you will see a great, incubation of the kind of assessment platform that we will work with you. Because I can come and confuse you, they can come and confuse you, but you don't really understand what we really need. So I think that's where I think we need to discuss internally and then come back to you as a problem statement which you can solve. That's my view, Amudit.
Hmm. That's a very good way of looking at it. And actually, this thing was something that I want to ask as a part of the agenda as well. Probably if you can elaborate on it. So, what we have seen is when a company is getting started with these technical assessments, right? So, there's a lot of friction at times we have seen between the engineering and the talent functions. And not just
Yeah.
when they're starting off, even at an advanced stage, we have seen that, companies struggle to get on the same page about the right mechanism for assessing talent, because at the same time when you're talking about automating these tools, there may be different approaches to it, different approaches, different theories that one may come up with for evaluating talent, and one may have a different expectation in terms of timelines, etc. So what do you think is the right way to go about bringing both the TA function and the engineering function on the same page about assessment?
See, it all depends upon. Okay, I'll go back a step to kind of give you that perspective, Mudit. So, if I actually do what is required by the business function, then I'm considered as a service provider.
Hmm.
If I'm able to understand your requirements and tailor the solutions that I have, maybe I'm a business partner. If I'm able to understand what exactly is your problem and we both work together, then we are in a business driver kind of a approach, right? Giving the same example, what I'm trying to say is that a technology function, engineering function exactly knows what they want.
Hmm.
I kind of say that even recruitment team or talent acquisition team also knows exactly what they want, right? If they both can discuss and understand and align to the strategies, that this is what we will do, this is how we will do. One size fits all, Mudit, it will not work, right? A Java assessment platform for 3 year experience, 4 years experience for one business function may not work for the same specific skill for other function. That is how we are complex, right?
Hmm.
So I think somewhere we need to understand that requirements are complex. Let's
Hmm.
start a dialogue. And you
Hmm.
haven't, and I'm not just giving you the suggestion or inputs, right? So wherever I worked, first person that I will talk is what exactly you want, and then I go back and to the drawing table and understand who are those people who could help me, and we get into a dialogue of giving that information of what these platforms can do, and zero in on the platform that can help. Let's understand that any platform that is out on the market may not be 100% suitable for your requirement. That is where customization or collaboration with the people of your size and shape will really help. Today I'm sure you will, if I ask you that question, that there will be an extremely happy customer and extremely unhappy customer. Why? Because with an extremely happy customer, there could have been a lot of dialogue that you had happened, right? There could be a lot of customization you would have done. Maybe that is a response, Mudit, from my side. A good
Hmm.
network, good discussion between these two teams, and they write down what they want and come to people like you and explain what exactly they want, and then you will tell us what you can give, and give us a phased wise manner that, okay, in Q1 of next year this is what we will give you, in Q2 of next year, because you'll also build the product the way it is, right? So then it will be very very clear. That's my view, Mudit.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And one thing that you mentioned about having, the analogy of having, being a business partner and business driver. For me, those lines used to be usually blurred, where I didn't really segment them. But I think it's a very interesting viewpoint around it. So thanks for putting that across.
Thank you, thank
Uh,
you.
One thing that I want to understand from you is so there are advantages around automating technical screening when we are looking to hiring technical talent. Fair enough, but at the same point in time, there are various cons to it as well. So I mean, usually what we have seen is like if somebody is not using these tools, which is like if we are typically talking about someone like Dun Bradstreet, I believe having a leader like you, they would have. I mean, I'm not making this up, but it's a fact. They will have a lot of things sorted in terms of what they want and what they do not want. But if there's a company which is in a growth stage, which is looking to get things right for themselves, it may be difficult for them to understand what are really the advantages of these technical assessment platforms. So, what do you think has been some of the advantages while implementing at various orgs that you have led so far?
So I I had this very interesting way of looking at things where uh, assessments have to be automated. Assessments have to be a yes no kind of a situation where I can take a call. Right. I don't
Hmm.
want an assessment which comes to me and then still I'm spending a lot of time on figuring out what that assessment is all about. Right. So I think somewhere in the early 17, 18s and all of that, where companies have realized that the paper-based assessments may not be completely foolproof, right? That is where people like you guys have come into picture and then gave us great UI, great compiler, and obviously write in one code, but write in one program, but you can actually convert into another programs and all of that. So now what happens is from a functional assessment, which is more of behavior and all of that, we have a good machinery. It could be psychometric assessment, it could be a one-on-one interview and all of that. We can do a great job, but technical assessment should be on this kind of a platform where we exactly know whether the person is able to understand the problem statement and able to replicate the code, right? What I also want people like you to do is that somewhere I think I feel, and I may be wrong, that you guys are stopping where you're giving us yes and no kind of a thing. But if you can just think beyond that and talk about personality of the individual, how that this person is able to code, how this person is able to collaborate, how this person is able to problem solve, right? Beyond the code, some attributes, if you can give it to us, that could become the food for thought for us to really dwell on and discuss on those aspects and talk to that person and then shortlist this person, right? So an early stage startup kind of company, I think they should have a clear vision of what kind of skills that they would like to hire. I don't want them to kind of mechanize so much because it doesn't really have value. I think they need to tell people that because today, Mudita, you also know, right? So anybody with 6+ years of experience, they are not interested to take the assessment, right? And this is a universal problem. But what we have done is we tell them why it is required. For a person calls this person, tells that this is important. This is the reason why we are doing it, and we have seen people convert and take the tests or assessments rather. So
Hmm.
for an early stage startup kind of companies, they should have a good value proposition. They should talk about the role more than skills and all of that, and slowly get connected to the people and tell them why they are doing what they are doing and how this assessment will help. In fact, I am also reading some articles where the codes that are written by people are also used by companies for future, and they're also learning and development activities. Look at the impact that you guys can create, right? I know that I got somebody got 90 percentile, okay, which is good, but there is an element of 10 percentile. If your data can give me that, okay, this should be his 30 days, 90 days, 60 days kind of a program, look at what value I've created for the company. That's my view, Nidhi.
Hmm. Yeah, I think yeah, there are several things that you mentioned, and these are also something that we'll have to take back and think. A few of them are already in the product roadmap, and a few of them are already out there. Like on the employee engagement piece, we are working with a few known brands out there who use our platform to engage talent. But this being said, it's a very valuable input, and I think this aspect of so there's definitely this functionality where someone can store the code and review it in the hiring process, but then leveraging it later on in the L&D process as well. It's something which is like a very interesting input and an interesting way to look at it.
Absolutely,
um,
because data is there. If you're not using the data, Mudit, there is no point in having the data, right?
mm,
So we all know, and I'm sorry, I'm bringing DNB. We are the largest data company,
yeah.
so there is no wrong data as such. If you really ask me, anything which is
Mm.
coming into you is a good data the way you use it.
Yeah. No, no. By the way, it's absolutely okay to bring DNB into the scenario. I think the practices that you have been implementing at not just DNB and every other company that you have led in the past is something that our audience would find very relevant and worth learning from.
Absolutely,
Uh, One thing that I want to understand is, so let's say somebody's getting started with these tools, right? And they don't know where to get started with. Absolutely zero clue which tool to pick, what parameter to think, and how to even get the assessments. Because if somebody comes to me, practically now that we have been in the industry for a while, we know, okay, how can we probably consult companies in terms of they want to get started with. But let's say somebody is not talking to our team members, and then they are just trying to figure out how do they get started with these assessments. So what would you advise to them? How do they get started with these tools? How do they pick one tool and even go forward with it?
so I think there are two ways that you can do. One is the view from the organization standpoint, and one is the view from the partner, which is people like you, right? So if I'm a Flipkart coming to you, right, and if you're already working with Amazon, right, right, so I'm sure both work in similar context and all of that stuff. That is where you can bring in the element of obviously intellectual property, data privacy can be taken out, but how you are helping a company like an Amazon so to sort out their assessment problems in the current scheme of things, which could be a straight jacket fit for a Flipkart, is the way that you should do to the companies who are coming to you. And for example, if I'm a Flipkart, then I before coming to you, I should do thorough research. And this is a view to my colleagues in the industry, right? If I go to 10 people, they will talk about 10 different companies, 10 different way of looking at it. Everyone says my product is good, but what is my competition working with, and has it been supporting the way they are looking at it, right? Can I do a soft reference check of a product which is used by my colleague who is in the similar industry of mine, who have apparently solved the problem of assessment? That could be a great start with. Today, if I don't do that and then start talking to all these hacker rank, hacker earth, and all of you, everyone will come up with a unique value proposition, and you can confuse us. So it is onus lies on the corporation to do complete research on what they can do, and also, and going back to the point that talking to the engineering function, there are times when your engineering function heads have worked in different companies, they have used certain other products already. That could be a start point for you. So I think a good drawing a board kind of a situation of, hey, what are we trying to do? Okay, what is our competition trying to do? Okay, is there a competition who is already successfully working on a specific platform? What is the name of this company? How is this company helping them? And can we talk to them and help them understand what is that they can do for us? That is the way I feel, Mudit. The simple and very, very effective way it will work.
Thank you for that candid response. And when you talked about, and I must admit this is true to a very considerable extent, that yes, uh, probably noticing a few case studies which are in the industry would really help in terms of figuring it out. Because yeah, I think as a product creators also, we may have a bias in terms of the product that we have built, and we might want to put the best foot forward. It's a good way to put it across that yes, if somebody's talking to us, the onus is on them to understand if we are really a fit for them, and go about it. I think
Absolutely.
that's a fair way of putting it across. One thing that I want to understand is on the assessment front itself, again circling back to it, often when we speak to companies, they talk about a massive churn happening, okay, in the first step itself. Like they would say we are sourcing talent from a bunch of places, and now there's a churn in the process, and there's a attrition in the funnel as we look at it. And okay, on one end, what we have typically seen, or what we have observed in the industry, is that yes, these platforms help in casting a wider net, but at the same time, there's an attrition also. And ultimately, maybe the bottom line may make us happy, but then if you look at the attrition, it does seem concerning at a lot of instances. So what is your approach to kind of solving this problem? How can someone make these assessments, make these tests more interesting for the candidates out there? Because ultimately, I think it's in the interest of the recruiters to get them assessed.
So I would go back to the example of a Flipkart where there are 100 people logging into their website that day, and only 10 people are buying the product, which means that there is a 900 plus people, 990 people did not buy the product, right? So similarly, if I have sent 10 assessments, only one person is taking the test. I'm just taking an example. I'm making it up, right? So what is the reason why these 9 people are not taking the test, right? That is where we start. So if you start looking at that, then you will slowly understand the pattern, right? Then in our case, we have a very interesting 30 minutes conversation kind of thing happens, where we say that this is the reason why we are doing it, and this code is exactly the way that you will, when you join our company, this is how you will work with us, and these are the kind of similar problem statements that you will work on, right? And we would want to understand your ability to code, which can actually become the process, and then we make them understand. And then we saw that after doing that activity, earlier used to be one email which goes that, okay, how are you doing and all of that stuff, and then take up the test. Now it is a complete call which happens. Sometimes you spend maybe 5 minutes with somebody, sometimes you may have to spend 30 minutes, right? That is something that we are doing, and it is really helping us. In fact, I'm very, very sure that we are able to at least look at 85% of the people taking the test. My still problem is people are not clearing the test, right? So I made people to write the assessment, but finally they're not. And then that is also something that I have gone back to the teams. Is our assessment very, very high end? Is it our assessment? If I have to look at somebody internally, would that person also clear this test? Because somewhere I think we need to also understand the benchmarking aspect, right? So you can have a high bar, but if nobody is actually going through the test or maybe clearing the test, there's no point in having the high bar, right? So that is where I think we spend a lot of time. And there are times when I involve my leaders to talk to these prospective people, to make them understand why we are doing what we are doing, and we have seen a good result there, right? So one is from the assessment platform standpoint, it has to be really good UI, and it has to have a catchy way of looking at it, because I don't want to get into a boring platform which is just does what it is required. And also some kind of interactive suggestions which could give me some kind of a ability to kind of think differently, right? And a smart message which comes that, okay, thank you very much for taking this assessment, it is great, we'd love to have you again, and all of that. So because hyper personalization is the way of looking at it, right? So while you are doing one part of that, you need to understand that the same person should actually be interested to take the test again. So how can you get that guy again is what you need to really look at. So that's the view, Mudit.
Yeah, I think it's a very important input that you've mentioned, and I think we made a post around this very recently. There was this report by Kelly Services which talked about we talked about UX, UI, and then hyper personalization and things like talking to them, which resulted in 86% conversion, which is massive. Uh, and this report said that if the candidate experience is good, the probability of somebody coming back is somewhere around 95% or so. And I think this was the report, as I recall. It's a fascinating number, and this is exactly what you pointed out, with a bit more practical pointers on top of it. So I think it's
Yeah,
a
I think there was a
very,
LinkedIn research also, Mudit, to be so I'm just cutting you there, Mudit. So
yeah.
it said that if I'm happy, I may go back to two three people and say that, hey, this is a good platform and I really liked it. If I'm
Hmm.
unhappy, then I may go back to 10 people and say that this is one of the worst platform that I have seen. So it is very important for us to make that person see. You cannot make everyone happy. Let's all understand it.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
in the process, how much time that the person has spent, I think you need to make sure that the person really felt that this is one of the best product. It has AI backend. It has some smart features and all of that, and they always see, right. So when they look at platform A to platform B, they'll always trying to understand why platform B is better. I think that is where people like you should understand that, okay, a platform A, platform B, and platform C. So if the person is coming to platform C, they should like the platform. So what is in platform A and platform B, which is not there, which I would want to put in platform C, which is my platform, is very, very important aspect that you should look at from a product roadmap standpoint, Mudit.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think yeah, I think it's an important input. And one thing that I think even I share with a lot of people that I speak to is, uh, when a test goes bad, right? It's not the platform which gets impacted the most, because, and I'm saying this despite being a product creator, is because technically, if I have to get clients, I may probably have another set of happy customers who will evangelize for us. But then it's the employer brand which gets impacted, which is a bigger impact. So looking at these
Absolutely.
things is probably more important and critical. It's an interesting bit. By the way, when you were testing around 86%, and you said that not a lot of people were, clearing this, what was your approach to solving this? Like, you then ended up testing more people after that, or how did you try to solve it? Because I'm sure if it's happening with someone like DNB, it must be happening with a lot of other companies as well.
So what we have done is we have relooked at the assessment platform itself, the assessment methodology or the questions which are there, and we had to kind of cut short some of them because that was really not required for that particular assessment. It came as an add-on kind of a thing, and that is playing a spoil sport kind of a thing, right? So sometimes you get some add-on which is actually not required, but you buy it because you like it, right? So we had to relook at the entire assessment methodology and cut short some of them. And then, because at the end of the day, if that is not being used for the work that the person is doing, there's no point in testing on that. Yeah, that's where
Hmm.
we looked at, and then we had to kind of cut short on that, and that really worked well.
Okay. By the way, this entire notion of being able to utilize that particular test in on the job skills is something which is often debated. Okay, and the reason I'm putting this across is, so there are a lot of testing mechanisms out there, because even on our platform, so what we have built on Skillspace is like, based on the requirement of the company, they can set up the test that they want. We can share our insights with them, but then it's up to them what kind of test they want. But what happens is, I've typically seen that companies often struggle to have one kind of assessment. So,
Absolutely.
if, for example, if you're looking at a entry level role, people would often debate whether one should evaluate based on projects or based on something called as data structures and algorithms, or general coding skills. So the example that you quoted, about having this is a relevant assessment. Will it be possible for you to share a bit more light in terms of what it was exactly, so that our viewers could understand a bit more from it?
So somewhere I think the context of assessment will go into the number of years of experience people have, right? As
Mm-hmm.
the experience goes up, the complexity of the work will actually go up, right? But there are people today, and I'm doing an interesting research, by the way. It is no more the years of experience, it's important. It is experience in those years, what that person has done in that 2 3 years, right? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you will feel that 10 years experience person working in good companies is not able to crack something. Maybe there is a guy with 4 years of experience can crack it, right? So we are looking at that aspect also, right? Of late we are saying that, okay, forget about experience and level. If you are able to code, if you are able to crack this puzzle, you can join us. So to that extent we are challenging ourselves, which means that we have widened the experience range. We no longer look for 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10 kind of a thing, right? We are saying 6 to 10 years, right? You are a 5-year experienced person, 6 years experienced person, you can crack the puzzle, please come and join us. That's how we are looking at it. So that is one way of looking at it. Second way of looking at it is we are also constantly changing the assessment, because the other example of proctoring or cheating and all that will come into picture, right? So if we don't do that very often, I think we'll become predictable and people can crack the code, right? So we are also doing that aspect, right? So every 3 6 months we kind of churn the questions and see if we can actually have a completely new set of guideline to the whole process. These are the two ways that we are looking at it.
Okay, yeah, I think it's very important that you mentioned around the questions, changed after around 3 6 months, because I'm not I get surprised to see how many people in the industry are not aware of this. That the moment you're a big company and you have a decent employer brand and you're testing people at a good scale, if you have the same test for an entire year, the questions are already there online. You may
Absolutely.
have the you may put the proctors right in front of them, but if they already have read the question and have practiced it, and it kills the purpose entirely. So I think
Absolutely. It is all this thing with it. What happens is we need to always think that the person who is sitting next to you is more smarter than you.
Yep.
That is when you will always keep on looking at change and transformation and all of that stuff, right? So I'm sure even for the proctoring, people have some code to crack the proctoring, right? So they have different ways of managing this problem. You have to
Yep.
always come up with a new problem statement.
Mm-hmm.
That is where I think the role of TA leader like me, and then business leaders have to constantly understand, because there's a talent branding element, right? So I'll give an example, right? So 1 year later, also the person is taking the same test. Somebody writes that, okay, this organization has not changed the pattern for the last 1 year. Look at the kind of impact it has created on the social environment for the same company, right? Uh, so that is very very important. You need to always look at. I always believe that one way of looking at it is Glassdoor, one LinkedIn, and you have to always have a lot of eyes and ears to see how your brand is perceived in the market. You can
Mm-hmm.
never give an opportunity to somebody to talk about your brand in a wrong direction or wrong way. That's my view.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I think it's very important input, and yeah, I think I think even talent functions or the recruiting teams should be a bit more cognizant of this fact and be vigilant in terms of the feedback that is coming from their audience, because they're their candidates. Because at times I'm
Absolutely.
just surprised to see there's a pretty big conglomerate who is recruiting for their organization, and Twitter is filled with their worries that this is not working out on the platform, so on and so forth. And it doesn't. And what I've seen is, yeah, it doesn't hamper. Nobody talks about the platform that is being used. Everybody talks about the company which is recruiting. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think yes. One thing that I want to understand is, because you have mentioned this several times around cheating. So how much important do you think it's important for is it for ensuring that how much important is it to ensure that there's a fair assessment? Because it's a I mean, yes, the more proctoring you have in place, I think the easiest thing for I mean to if I have to stop cheating, right, and I have to be absolutely sure about it, probably the only way to go do that is make someone stay with me for a good amount of time, and then make them give the test right in front of me. Because then developers are smart, they can, if they're working remotely, they can actually find some other way. But then having the systems in place has is kind of a, it's like an added factor that someone has to consider. Now, from someone who has been recruiting for a very good amount of time, what do you think is the importance of ensuring a fair examination or a fair hiring challenge?
So one thing that we have done and it is working well is that the same or similar kind of a problem statement is also asked when they are doing the personal interview, right? We have the code in front of us, and then the person is blabbering. Then you understand there is something wrong. The person is not able to think in the same direction it was coded earlier. I think there's something wrong. That is one way of looking at it. A second way of looking at it is, while there are 3 rounds of interviews, there with the concept of bar raiser and all, we all know about Amazon the way it does, right? So sometimes there is a constant question which keeps on repeating, which talks about how the person is varying the responses, right?
Hmm.
So these are two methods that is really helping us, and obviously I think we have not seen such a kind of, because when we hire people, when we go back after 3 months, this is one way, one other way of looking at it, right? So don't stop after recruiting, right? So then you have to go back to the business guys and say that, hey, you've hired Mudit for Java or Python development, and he seems to have scored a really good. How is he doing on the job? Then you
Hmm.
guys could get some input. Hey, he's doing well. Then somewhere it is working. It is not doing well. Then I think somewhere something went wrong. Figure out that, and then you'll slowly understand there are some areas that you need to start constantly work on, and you will fix the problem.
Yeah.
Habit of every 3 months. I have my recruiters who kind of go back and personally get into the conversation with hiring manager and say that, hey, last 3 months back you had a Java developer, and he seems to be okay as part of our HR engagement and all of that. How is he doing on the job? The guy says he's doing extremely well. I think you have done a good job. Then he says that, yeah, I think what we have assessed versus what he is producing is not the right direction. And then the next question is, how is the attitude of this person? And you have an attitude, and I'm bringing another other element to the whole conversation just to kind of give you the perspective. And there's an attitudinal element is also something which can be questioned. Then I think somewhere the whole process did not really yield the way we would want to look at.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a, and this process is usually data driven, or it's more qualitative in nature where you're because one is exactly definitely, yeah.
Data driven, completely data driven.
Okay. Okay. Can you share a bit more insight on this? How do you typically implement this on the ground?
So basically what happens is we have this 30, 60, 90-day kind of feedback which comes in from the individual, talking about how he felt about the interview process, how he felt the initial 30 days, 60 to 90 days. That becomes a trigger for the recruiter to go back to the hiring manager and
Hmm.
ask them whether the person is doing well or not. And we don't do every case like that, right? So it's a sample
Hmm.
kind of situation. But more interestingly, what we are also doing is very, very interesting stuff. I must say, we're going back to the Mudit of the world and asking, hey, we've hired you to do Python coding, but are you doing Python coding? Are you doing what is told to you on the job description? Because sometimes it
Hmm.
so happens that we all know about job descriptions. What happens, right? So there is a standard job description. Sometimes one in maybe 100 times people say, actually, I'm doing something different. I'm liking it. Fine. I'm not liking it. That is where the recruiter and business partner should work and go back to the hiring teams, alert it, red flag it, so that if it happens once, it can happen again, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's like, you are adding one family member to your family. Is it not your responsibility to make sure that the person is happy about what he or she is doing, right?
Yeah.
After hiring, just leave it. It doesn't work that way. True business
Yeah.
partner is the one who will always be constantly touch with the business, understand what's happening, understand the people element, understand technology element, constantly changing the technology, constantly looking at new partners, constantly looking at new ways of solving problems. Because the
Hmm.
problems that you had last year, the solutions that you had last year will not work for the new problems that is coming today. right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to always, and then what is my counterpart in a company like, maybe in Amazon and doing,
Mm-hmm.
and if it is working fine, so there's no worry in copying something which is working. Nobody
Yeah.
should be bothered about it. If it is working
Mhm.
fine, I think you should just copy and then see how it really, and then maybe do some changes the way it is required for your organization. And that's how you
Mhm.
constantly build the credibility to the business. Otherwise, you are one of the other employee in the system, right? So this, you know, what is the value add you are trying to give the system?
Yeah, yeah, that's a. I think these are a few set of actionable inputs that you've given, and people would actually go and try to implement this 30, 60, 90 thing. Uh, in all likelihood, it's an important session. One thing that I want to understand from you is typically if somebody is recruiting experienced talent, let's say senior developers or senior data scientists. Data scientists anyway have at least a 5+ years of experience, right? Do
Hmm.
you send them the same test, or I mean, I think given your experience, your answer so far, I think you would have a different approach to it. I'm curious to know that what's the approach and how do you typically tackle it? Because ultimately, you would want to assess them. So how do you go about it?
So it is more of a problem statement driven approach. There is a problem statement given to the person, obviously intellectual property taken out, because we don't want to showcase something which the person may or may not join us and all of that stuff, right? So but something which is similar to what the problem that we are facing, and in the process the person can use something like a code pair and all of that and do coding in front of me, right? So there is a problem statement, then there is a kind of given some kind of a view about uh, how to solve the problem, then the person is able to articulate the solutions and all of that, and then in the process there is a code element. Then the code element is taken care, and then there's a final element of completing the whole assessment and all of that stuff, and then giving you the solution kind of thing. That's what we do. For senior level people, I think one is panel interview, and obviously most importantly job specific assessment, which has coupled with some code pair kind of a situation, is what we look at. There is completely different for a senior level people, completely different for a junior level. I don't want to mention junior, senior, everyone is same for us. But somebody with 6- years of experience have a different way of looking at it. Somebody with 6+ years of experience is more personalized. We tell them why we are doing what we are doing. If required, we will be part of the meeting when the code that somebody is writing the code and all of that. And there are times when we actually solve the problem that the person is not able to kind of code, because that also gives us the element of cultural element of the company, right? So we wanted them to feel that you got joined us or not, or you got selected in this organization or not, you're treated very fairly, you're treated very well. Because going back to the LinkedIn example, right? If I give you a great experience, you will go and tell this to 10 people. So that is what it is. That is the element that we look at. So basically, two different methodologies, slightly more personalized for senior level people, and then yes, there is an element of assessment, code assessment kind of thing for junior level people.
Okay, okay. Thank you for sharing that. I want to pick, there are a few questions that I just noticed. My team prompted me to have a look at the questions also that they've been sending me on Slack. So that the people are asking on various platforms. So I'll pick one of them. It's about, okay, so I'll pick this one. Madhuri is asking this question. Yeah, any specific recommendations for testing university talent with these tools? Are there any practices that work for companies at the scale of DNB, etc.?
So we have used one of the product. In fact, I'm evaluating Skillspace as we speak, but we have used a specific product at your par to assess the university talent. And I would always urge all of you to think about university talent slightly differently, because coding as such, there are multiple platforms that they are there, and then you can help them. But I think more assessment should be done on personality, ability to understand and complex situations and all of that. I think you need to have a great assessment methodology which actually brings in a lot of qualities of people more objectively than just 30 minutes interview kind of a thing, right? Because you're investing in talent, you're investing in your own company. It is great way to invest in the right talent, right? So because they can come and then they can actually challenge some of your seniors, That's the kind of talent that
Mhm.
you're trying to hire. So code assessments, I think there are multiple assessment platforms, but I think I would suggest you to have a greater element of personality versus ability towards attitude towards approach of problem statement, problem solving, and all of that. That should be your actual crux in the whole thing, is what I feel, Madhuri.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and that's a valid input because anyway, as you mentioned in the discussion earlier, that if you're looking to hire an talent, anyway, they would have to develop. You would expect skills from someone who's already there in the industry at some point in
Absolutely,
time. Yeah, and from freshers, while you can bet on their skills, it's more important to bet on their attitude because if this take and start delivering results, it will compound over time. I think
absolutely.
yeah. That's an interesting way to go about it. Uh, there is one question that I want to pick this up. How do you decide whom to test? Now, this is more on the implementation front, but yes, again, it's something that is, if it comes from it, it'll be important. Now, do you send tests to everyone who applies to Dun Bradstreet because a company like DNB would get a lot of applicants? So, how do you go about it?
So I think a very interesting question, I would say. Um, our website is we have an AI for our entire applicant tracking system, which means that this AI is always working with multiple channels of candidates pushing candidates to the website, right? And we also have a slight AI on a parsing technology. I think Mudit, you know this better, which can give us some kind of a rating to the candidate's CV, adjusting to the job description that the person has applied to. Right? I'm sure we can question that assessment whether it is right or wrong and all of that stuff, but that gives us some kind of a scoring that hey, this guy is 70 out of 100 or maybe 80 out of 100 based on the job description. Then there will be a, a call which happens to all those people whom we feel they're good, and based on their assessment and their interest to take the assessment and all of that, the assessment test is taken up or sent, right? It's not like a multiple mass email sent, because that's not the idea. It will not be attended at all. They need to understand the company. They need to understand why we are doing the assessment. They need to also understand how does this assessment help in the overall scheme of things. Once they are clear, that is when the assessment is sent, and then the assessment is taken up. We are seeing a good amount of parallels between the AI of the system, which says 70% or 100%, and then the guy is also cracking the test. Somewhere, I think there is some data, and then those people will go through some personal round of interview, and obviously, the rest is the history that we all know.
Thank you for answering that. One more question that I want to pick very quickly. This seems to be a short one, asked by Garvit on LinkedIn. What sort of assessment do you do in university hiring? Like, because you talked about multiple ways to assess, right? So, yeah.
I would say, I think three pronged approach, Garvat. One is technical assessment, which is code assessment and all that. Second is more behavioral assessment, and cultural assessment. Behavioral assessment and cultural assessment, according to me, are two different things. Behavioral assessment, you're looking at whether the person is able to understand the culture of the organization from a culture standpoint. From a culture, there is every company has different way to look at culture. For example, if you look at DNB, one of the cultures is learning. So,
Mm.
irrespective whether it is required or not, you have to learn, right? One of the culture of the organization is also customer assessment kind of thing, right? Or the partner assessment kind of thing. So, we have our assessments integrated to the cultural aspect of it, and then there are some psychometric assessment which goes through, and then there is a personal interview which happens, right? Personal interview takes the supersede, because sometimes it so happens that the people may not answer the right way of looking at it. That is when the personal interview happens, and then we have the code assessment, which is good. We have cultural assessment, which is giving a fair idea. Then we are talking about some of the elements of the individual, and then getting lot more notes, and then finally assessing that person, and then finally hiring that person, right? So technical, cultural, and behavioral, these are three things that I would want to kind of look at it.
Okay. Thank you for answering that, Vishwa. I have one quick follow-on question on this only. This is from my end. So when you talk about assessing on cultural front, do you do that via or psychometric assessments? Do that via the platform itself? Because that is doable, but what's your approach? Do it via the platform or you do it manually
So we are
or on
doing both actually. There has been time when we were doing both, But I think next year onwards we are planning to have a platform to do this kind of activity. We believe in personal interaction more than any technical tool assessment and all. Not that we don't believe the assessment scores and all that. So we believe in giving little more benefit of doubt to the people who may not have done great in the assessment kind of thing. It's also okay to kind of pick up somebody who did not understand the assessment, and then he or she was able to answer it in your interview process. So we give it that benefit of doubt. Yes. So we next year I think we will start using one product, but by now I think we are only using both technical product and then personal both. So both the things are there.
Okay, okay. Thank you for answering that, Vishwa. Next question that I want to pick up that we got from one of our registrants is, um, since you proactively mentoring several early stage companies, what's your advice to an early stage company who's looking to start hiring the best talent? How do you think one gets started with hiring benchmarks and timelines?
So, so the best talent will not join you unless and until they see you as the best, right? So you need to bring in the value of why you are so good and what kind of people that you are hiring, and that is the value proposition way of looking at it, right? And second is, I have in my experience I have seen people joining smaller organizations doing greater quality work than joining larger organization and doing maybe substandard work. So I don't demean anything, I'm giving you my point of view, right? So there are people who are really good and they are okay to kind of join you as a startup company with slightly lesser pay, provided they get great quality work. So in your value proposition or in your selling, how do you want to sell the role, how do you want to sell the quality of work, that becomes more important. And in the initial phases, I think the founder should start assessing and interviewing people and all that. They should not rely on recruitment team. Yes, recruitment team will be there, but they should take that responsibility. And until the company becomes maybe 50, 60 or 100, I think founders should actually talk to everyone. That is later, maybe they can get into a BAU mode or anything, but I think founders should pick up those people, according to me, and they should have the time to talk to these people, understand their viewpoint, and then sell the idea of the company, right? I have seen many of my friends who were trying to hire best of the best talent, but they were not able to communicate why this company is the best in the industry, right? So somewhere I think you need to step back, understand the value proposition of your own product, how is it different than other companies and all of that, and then sell that as a value proposition to the people. That is when you will be able to. And I'm sure if you become 100, I think 100 to 1000 you will become in less than maybe 6 months time. But 0 to 100 takes a longer time for you. So that's my view, Mohit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because ultimately that's what is building the foundation, right? And if you're having people who are probably aligning in terms of values or vision, it's important. I would agree to that being, we ourselves try to hire on the same front.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think it's a very important input for anyone who's at that stage. Um, One thing that I want to understand is the timelines bit. So typically, I mean, what's a good? So what I have seen as questions, to be very frank, from companies is like, how if they start keeping a target of hiring, they would probably keep it as 2 3 weeks as well. But then they may not end up achieving it. And because they are at an early stage, they may not have a data point to look at, right? So how does one estimate a good timeline to look at? Is it something based on experimentation and observing what works, or what's your recommendation in that
So
case?
I'm sure when a founder, and I'm sure we today's generation, I think not many people are joining startups as after engineering, right? So which means that many of them have actually worked in different companies and starting up. If you look
Hmm.
at the data, so when you were with a company like a DNB, worked for 5 years, and now you are starting up something, you very well know what time it took for you to hire when you were in the same company for your own teams, right? So that
Hmm.
should be your start point, right?
Hmm.
If you're doing better than that, then you're a really great founder as such, right? And industry says that if the notice periods are 3 months, right? So you cannot say that I will hire somebody in 30 days. It will never happen. right? So the hiring time itself will take maybe 25 to 30 days, and then there is a notice period time which is another 90 days or 60 days kind of thing, right? You need to bake in your timelines in such a way so that you will always be able to achieve it. You can have an aggressive target. For example, some companies have this Q1, Q2, Q3, they will aggressively go, and Q4 they will not hire. There are some companies at any given point in time there are requirements, so you can have your own way of looking at it. But please understand, the industry has certain policies you have to abide with. If you are trying to hire a best talent, most likely the person will be retained by the current organization. Most likely the person will be spending 90 days in the current company, because if you felt that the guy is good, the guy is already doing really well in the current company, right? So what value proposition that you're giving it to this person for that person to kind of cut out and then come in and join you, that is more important. So having a structured approach, you need to always look at metrics and data behind the metrics, right? So sometimes metrics may not show you the right direction. You need to understand why this metrics is actually behaving like this. What is that I need to do to change my metrics? Like a run rate, if you keep hitting 3 runs in a over, after 20 overs you will get into 60 runs. There's no hard and fast rule about it. So on an over of 4 or 5, if you take a step back and say, hey, the score is 200. If I go like this, I'll not be able to hit. So what is that you need to do from third over to 17th over is very, very important. That's the view.
That's an interesting analogy, by the way. Uh,
Yeah. I'm a cricket lover, by the way, so that's how it is
Yeah,
coming up.
that's pretty evident from this example. One quick question that I'll ask is, because we are inching towards the end of the session, I'll have to pick two questions. One that one of our attendees have asked is, there are cases when one is a good, when one candidate is good technologically but they lack aptitude. Okay, so what's your approach in that case? I think it's Garvit only who has asked this. Yeah.
So I would say give little more ability, a little more weightage to ability and attitude, because coding people can learn, right?
Okay.
But for example, the same role is demands huge amount of coding and all of that stuff. Don't take risk with that guy, because you might hire that person. He or she will be under tremendous pressure. So as a recruiter, I'll go back to the hiring leader and say that, hey, this guy seems to be really good ability wise, attitude wise, slightly on a lower side on in coding. Is there a way that you can give him a soft launch? Hiring manager says yes, go ahead and hire that person. That person will remember you in your entire life. Hiring
Hmm.
manager says, so this particular project demands day one coding and all of that stuff. Then you go back to the person and say that this is the situation that you are in. Let that
Hmm.
person give you that strong evidence that he or she will do that, and then facilitate one more meeting with the hiring manager, because you cannot push anything, right? Hiring manager should like it. Facilitate one more meeting. If both of them are fine, hire that person. But given an opportunity, I would pick up attitude first.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that. One last question that I want to pick, as we are inching towards the end, is basically is around it's around remote hiring. Okay, because at this point in time, almost every company is hiring remotely. I'm not. I think that would be the case with DNB also. You cannot call every single candidate to office given the current circumstances. Uh, and So, what's your approach to kind of delivering excellent, fantastic experience if you're hiring remotely? And if you could, talk about from an assessment standpoint, that will be helpful.
So remote hiring is here to stay. Okay, I'm making a
Hmm.
statement.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, I started believing that before even COVID situation happened in my previous organization, we were doing a lot of stuff on online, right?
Hmm.
So the reason why we were little more advanced than others who really struggled to get into online was because we had some kind of story knowledge already built in, so that COVID was not a surprise for us. Similarly, how much personalization you can bring into the table is very, very important, right? I have two ways of looking at it, right? So one is the email goes to the candidate, candidate applies, then candidate goes through assessment, then a candidate goes through one round of interview, 2 rounds of interviews, and offer is done, right? That's one way of looking at it. Second way of looking at it is The person who picks up the phone talks about what is DNB, why DNB, what is that we are trying to do differently than other companies, and making that person understand. And from a journey of candidate to applicant, you have to make the candidate to an applicant. Then once a person becomes applicant, then tell him or her that these are the 4 or 5 things that you can expect from us. There'll be a code assessment, there'll be a functional round of interview, there'll be an interview with your business leader and your own HR round of interview. Understand the appetite of the person. There might be people who are in rush. There might be people who say that, yeah, I'm fine with this kind of an approach and all of that stuff. Then say what you do what you say. If you're told that there are 4 rounds of interviews which will get conducted in 7 days, so be it. And then you complete the interview process, and then you talk to the person. Even before the hiring is done or offer is done, you should take one example of assessment from experience standpoint. How was the experience of this individual? All the people who got offers will have a great experience. Let's all understand that, right? People who did not get an offer may not have great experience. Talk to them, understand what kind of experience they have gone through, because if this has happened to somebody, that will happen to somebody else again, right? And that's how you build that career, this thing. And then you will see that people who have gone through interview process are the ones who will give you references. And for the references, guys, you don't need to spend as much time because they would have already given you all the download, right? So make the person believe in your organization, make the person as a family member. It's very tough to kind of make it, but if you start thinking in the direction, you will be able to do it. And my experience says that I was able to do that in my teams wherever I worked.
Thank you for that insightful answer towards the end of the session. So now I think we are almost past one, and this is where I would really, want to thank the audience who have been with us, and more importantly, you, Vishwanath, because you've been super kind to answer all the questions, and from a very unbiased standpoint, and from someone who is in the industry and feels that yes, they should give back. So
Absolutely.
thanks a ton, Vishwa. I could hear some some maybe Skype calls coming to you, but you were very kind to complete your question and answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you
more
very much.
important. Thank you
Thanks a
very
ton,
much.
Vishwa.
And thank you all of you for your 1 hour spent. You guys can add me into LinkedIn. If you have any questions that you could not ask, please shoot it into the LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Take care.
Bye. Take care.